Households connected to the power grid typically receive electricity from a distribution network service provider, which owns and operates the infrastructure, such as poles and wires, that deliver power to properties. This setup can be confusing because in some parts of Australia, like regional Queensland and Western Australia, the network companies also serve as electricity retailers. However, in most areas, including New South Wales, Victoria and Southeast Queensland, the network company and the electricity retailer are separate entities. The electricity grid was originally designed for one-way power flow. Electricity is generated at large power stations, transmitted over long distances, and then delivered to homes. It wasn't built to handle electricity flowing back into the grid from homes, which can create challenges as more households install solar systems that feed power back. To manage this, networks set limits on system sizes, at least until the grid becomes more advanced and can better handle two-way electricity flow. Most networks have a pre-approval process that automatically approves connections meeting specific criteria, including system size, up to 5 kilowatts for single-phase connections and up to 30 kilowatts for three-phase connections. However, these size limits aren't fixed. Larger systems can sometimes be approved, though this may involve more paperwork, longer wait times, and potential extra fees. Another important consideration with size limits is solar feed-in tariff eligibility. Larger systems might be approved for installation, but not for exporting energy to the grid, meaning the site may not qualify for a feed-in tariff. In these cases, it's important to maximize the self-consumption of solar energy to avoid waste. Note that the feed-in tariff limit might be determined by the electricity retailer rather than the network, although many DNSPs reserve the right to assess each connection on a case-by-case basis. Typically, 5 kilowatts is the upper limit for single-phase connections, although some networks allow up to 10 kilowatts. There are many variations. Some networks permit larger systems with special approval, and some include battery inverter capacity in the total allowable capacity. The limits can be set in kilowatts or kilovolt amperes, usually based on inverter capacity, but sometimes on the peak solar array capacity. When getting into specifics, it can become quite complex. Some DNSPs around Australia have opted to use dynamic response systems, such as dynamic operating envelopes. This can better manage the increasing integration of distributed energy resources, like solar panels and battery storage, into the electricity grid. As more customers generate their own electricity, especially from renewable sources, there is a greater need to ensure that the grid remains stable and efficient. Dynamic response allows the DNSP to adjust power flows in real time, preventing the grid from being overloaded by reducing energy exports or underutilized by charging batteries from the grid. This approach enables the DNSP to integrate more distributed energy resources efficiently while minimizing the need for costly infrastructure upgrades. For both single-phase and three-phase sites, the maximum inverter capacity per phase can be different depending on whether dynamic operation is enabled. In single-phase sites, the capacity is limited to 10 kVA per phase without dynamic operation, but with dynamic operation, this increases to a total of 20 kVA per phase, divided between 10 kVA for PV inverters and 10 kVA for energy storage system inverters. Similarly, three-phase sites can support up to 10 kVA per phase without dynamic operation and up to 20 kVA per phase with dynamic operation, again split between PV and ESS inverters. Dynamic operation can allow for greater flexibility and higher total inverter capacities on both single and three-phase sites.